Welcome to the Sober Biz Podcast, the show for the bold, the brilliant, and the booze-free. Here we talk about building meaningful booze-free businesses, turning your mess into your message, and showing up even when you feel like an imposter. This is no fluff and no filters, honest conversations for alcohol-free entrepreneurs who want to make an impact. Hello and welcome back to the Sober Biz Podcast. I am so thrilled to have our guest today, Margy. She is one of the founders or creators of Amplify Sober Voices, which is an amazing event that is about to take off in January, and also one of the founders of Sober Life Rocks. Welcome, Margy. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you. Yeah, I'm beside myself. So happy to have met you and to learn about all the things you're doing and to have you coming to Amplify.
I can't wait. I feel like there's not enough of these kinds of conferences going on, and I don't know why, because I know the sober space is exploding, but there isn't a ton of stuff out there for sober creators and entrepreneurs to really get connected and meet each other and support each other. And I've been snooping some of your stuff, and I love how you talk about that and the importance of that connection piece between entrepreneurs, creators in the sober space. I'd love to get a little bit of the origin story behind Sober Life Rocks, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
1,000%.
Mhm.
So we started, so Laura Nelson is my business partner, and we started Sober Life Rocks just a little over 2 years ago. And I, at the time, had been sober for 18 and a half years, and I had never publicly told people in my professional space that I was sober. Um, when I got sober 18, now almost 21 years ago, the stigma was real. And so you just didn't talk about that stuff.
Mm.
And so we were at this, and I knew Laura, and she had been sober for, I think at the time, like 3 years. And we knew each other from our professional lives. And I had seen her TikTok channel about her getting sober. And so she was one of the few people that I had approached at one of the other conferences we were at. And I'd been like, oh, right? I didn't want to say it loud. And here she is being loud on TikTok, but she also really didn't talk about it much in her professional space. Somehow she mentally thought those were two different spaces. So we were at this women's entrepreneurial retreat, and she had been invited to be on a panel that was about mind body health.
Mm.
And the reason she had been invited was because she obviously was publicly sober, and just to talk about what that had done for her in her life. So she's answering some question, and there was maybe, I don't know, 125 women there, and we knew most of them. We'd gone for a couple of years, and they're all in our industry. And just sort of spontaneously, she's like, I'm just curious, how many people in this room don't drink for whatever reason, health or recovery or religion or just because whatever? So, Brooke, in that moment, I had this big decision to make. And I start slowly raising my hand, and I'm looking around surreptitiously. And 15 to 20% of the room was doing the exact same thing as me. And I
Wow.
look around at all these people, and Laura's looking at me, and I'm looking at her. My eyes are huge. And I'm like, what just happened? Like, I know these women, and I didn't know that about them. Oh, and by the way, they didn't know it about me. So we grabbed each other for lunch afterwards. And I said to her, I was like, this has got to change. This has got to stop. But it has to start with me. Like, I can't put baby in the corner anymore. And thus, Sober Life Rocks was born. And our real mission has always been to normalize sober choices, specifically in professional events.
Mm.
You go to these conferences, and the only way that they know how to entertain people is to shove you all in a ballroom, crank the music up loud, and put the little black bars in the corners.
Yeah.
And then when you go and you're screaming at the top of your lungs at the bartender, hey, do you have anything non-alcoholic? When you're trying to be subtle, like it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So that was kind of the first arena that we got into. And then I started our podcast, the Sober Life Rocks podcast. And I started meeting people like you, just amazing men and women who are doing such cool work in this space. Everything from, recovery friendly workplaces to helping people with the getting sober, helping people with what happens once you are sober,
Mm.
celebrations. just all the things, and non-alcoholic businesses, ancillary businesses serving this space. And in those conversations, I realized, like, oh, I'm talking to somebody in New Jersey who's trying to do this brand new thing, but I already know somebody in California who's also trying to do a brand new thing, but they don't know each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we could go further faster if we started to meet each other and lift each other up and refer to each other and collaborate together. And that's how we came up with this idea about Amplify Sober Voices. Because to our knowledge, there isn't currently any conference who specifically focuses on the leaders in this space, the thought leaders, the coaches, the business owners, the podcasters, the writers, all of the people who are publicly trying to move this forward don't have a place to gather.
Mm.
So that's what Amplify Sober Voices started out as. Now, in addition to that, people like you who I talked to just before we got on, you were like, I'm just starting to do my public speaking career and I'm not really sure how to get started. I've talked to so many people who were like, I think I have a book in me, but I'm just not sure how to get started. Or I'm already running a podcast, but I just don't know how to make it better.
Mm.
Or I already am pretty big on social media, but I don't know what to do with that. And so we came up with the idea that in order to help us all grow further and faster, the content of the conference will be focused on amplifying your voice as a podcaster,
Mm.
amplifying your voice as a writer, as a speaker, and as an influencer. An influencer to us means not just on social media, but what influence do you have in your community? What influence do you have in your workplace? What influence do you have with your family and friends? All of these things are ways that we can help to normalize this whole conversation out there in the world. So I'm beside myself excited, as you can tell. And I just feel like what started as that spark of, wow, 15 to 20% of people that I know in a meeting are also walking a alcohol-free journey. How how much of a ripple could we all have
Mm.
if we did this collaboratively?
That is so true. And even the numbers coming out today are more like 56% of people are not consuming alcohol, and it's a very underserved half of the population. So I'm wildly excited. I want to go back a little bit to the beginning. You said you were 20, what was it, 24, 21 years sober?
Right now, yeah, I'm 20 years sober now. In
20
February, I'll be
years.
21.
Wow. That's incredible. So, what have you noticed throughout your 2 decades of sobriety in terms of like the changing conversation? I know you talked about how it was really hush hush, nobody wanted to come out. Do you think there's been more of a movement to talk freely and openly about this? Or do you think there's still quite a bit of stigma to work through?
Um, oh, yes, all of it.
Okay.
Uh, at the time that I got sober, the stigma was real.
Mhm.
Um, the only image people had of an alcoholic was somebody who had basically lost everything. And that wasn't
Mhm.
me. I still had a house. I still was a single mom taking care of my kids. I still had a very, very high level job, the cars and all that. My life was crumbling from the inside and the edges were starting to fray. Um, but when I got sober, like, the only thing that was available to me at the time was AA, which
Mhm.
thank God it was there.
Mhm.
And I threw myself in. But I remember, Brooke, I didn't want anybody to know. And I lived in an area where it's very neighborhood centric. All the kids play on the same soccer teams or the same baseball teams or go to the similar churches, and all of them go to the same schools. So we knew everybody. And there was a building where the AA meeting was upstairs. And it was on a main road that people went to and from all the things. So I would park in the back, and then I would wait until the light was going so that cars were moving faster. And then I would scurry around the stairs and up to the AA meeting because I didn't want anybody to see me while they were stopped at the stoplight. I mean, it was bad. But a lot of that was my own shame as well. My own story that I was telling myself about what kind of a failure I was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would say that that kind of environment really was more prevalent through the pandemic. Um, I did, at 10 years sober, take a risk. My day job is I'm a speaker coach.
Mm.
And I had an opportunity to speak at a conference, which was for speakers, for speaker development. And this was going to be my big break. I had had in this business for a little over a year at the time and was having a hard time getting traction. And now I was being invited to speak at a conference for speakers. So I always teach people that if you have an audience that doesn't already know you, like you, and trust you, it's really important to open with some vulnerability that really ties to your purpose
Mm.
of why you're there and why you're passionate about what you do. And after thinking about it a long time and talking to some trusted friends, my true vulnerable moment and passion was a short little story that I'll tell an even briefer version of right now. But essentially, what I said on stage was I grew up in a family with an alcoholic mother, and our life was chaos. And I did my best to help raise me and my brother in the midst of all that chaos, but I vowed I would never be like my mom. And by my 20s, I was exactly like my mom, single mother, two small kids, drinking out of control. And I'm sure that there was people along the way that were there available to help me, both with, the drinking and just life skills, but I didn't see them at the time. And it wasn't until I got sober when people started showing up in my life who they helped me learn how to dress better, how to put on makeup, how to be a good employee or a good employer or a better mother or better for all the things, because my mom just wasn't there to teach me these adulting skills. And it helped me become, the version of me that you see today. And there's nothing I can ever do to repay those women. Not that they're the sort who would ever want that, right? But I feel this just gratitude. But the best that I can do is to help other people become the best version of themselves in my area of genius. And I said, and that's why I'm here today.
Mm.
Now you could have heard a pin drop. Everybody's leaning in, wanting to hear what I have to say next. And the rest of the talk went fantastically. People ran up to me afterwards with their business cards saying, please, 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 I want to hire you. It was my wildest dream come true. And a couple of people pulled me aside and said, thank you so much for sharing that. That really sounds a lot like what I went through. Or, I know my brother struggles with this, or whatever the things were. But later that evening at a cocktail party, two very influential members of that community came up to me separately and essentially said, good job, Margy, but you might not want to talk about that sober thing. And that was my worst fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that point on, again, for another 8.5 years, I never mentioned it. Maybe 4 or 5 of my closest colleagues and friends in this space, I told confidentially, and they've always kept my confidentiality, but I never told anybody. Now, I think looking back, 2000 was a pivotal point to your question. I think that two things happened. One is during the shutdowns, people either drank way too much and kind of had a aha moment,
Mm-hmm.
or they looked at that as an opportunity to be, because they were on their own, they weren't going to drink at home, and tried like a 30-day challenge, which turned into a 60-day challenge, which turned into, wow, I really feel good. I'm not going to drink anymore. So either people at home or after having been at home drank too much. I think it was a big shift. And there was an opportunity to look at themselves differently than they would have just if the train kept rolling.
Mm. I think
And
you got
I've
it.
talked to,
No, I
yeah,
think
I've
you
talked to
got that
so
right.
many
Yeah.
people who 2000 or 2000 or 2020 or 2021 was their sober date.
Yeah. I think too, with the access to home deliveries and like things that came, there was a lot of excessive adult indulgence, and even the studies have shown that there's a lot of excessive indulgence through the pandemic. And yeah, and then we all kind of like rub our eyes and come out of that moment, right? And oh my gosh, is this a habit I want to continue? And I remember seeing memes popping up through the pandemic of like, this is what AA is going to look like in 2021. It was just like stadiums full of people like trying to get sober. It was so funny. And I also feel like that really pushed a lot of sober voices onto online because we were now showing up on Zoom through 12-step meetings. I mean, people were getting more comfortable sharing their stories and being digital about it. And I noticed a huge influx. I started my first podcast in 2019, like right before the pandemic, and we were all in person. And then once it shut down, it just exploded. We had guests from all over the world now because we weren't just a local podcast. It was like worldwide. We were having so many more conversations and it felt more important than ever to like reach out and find connection within the sober space because we couldn't just, go to a meeting or find those local groups to connect with. And isolation is where addiction breeds, and whether that's to alcohol or gambling or my phone, food, it's when we're alone in those spaces with
All
our
the
thoughts.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too that the other thing that's happened that's really made a change is this growth of sober coaches.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I think that things like, Annie Grace's This Naked Mind book, and I mean, I can go on. I don't want to single anybody out, but there's so many really, really good coaching programs and
Yes.
good certification programs has allowed people a different narrative, which doesn't feel as shame based.
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges that I personally had, not everybody has this, but I personally did with the messaging in AA was that, there was this idea that you were a liar, cheat, and a thief, and you needed to make amends to the whole world for having been such a,
Human.
terrible actor. Well, I wasn't those things.
Yeah.
I was self medicating, no doubt about that. But I was going to work every day. I was raising my kids. I was, head of the PTA. I was the soccer mom. I was all the things. I showed up to all the things. I had my water bottle filled with wine, but I was there,
Mm.
you know. And so I think that the new messaging that has come out of a lot of this coaching about choice and emotional sobriety and health and all the things that we now hear have really opened up the doorway for a lot more people to feel good about this choice as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
shame based about the choice, scurrying from the back of the building around to the front when the cars are driving by is no longer um, the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing that's happened is that this younger generation, the Gen X's, no,
Gen
Gen
Z.
Z's,
Yeah.
Gen Z, in all different walks of their life, they are much more interested in personhood,
Mm-hmm.
in health, and in society, and in the planet, and
Yeah.
all of these different things. And they're making up a large portion of people who don't drink.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of these changes all happening all at once, Brooke, I think has taken this, little tiny wave out in the ocean and brought it up to the shore where it's now cresting as a wave. But that being said, you and me, and probably people listening to this podcast, we're in a bubble
Yeah.
where our feeds are filled with this stuff. And so we see it as like so big and so much. And the reality is that for the 90% of people out there who don't listen to this content or aren't on social media, they have no idea yet. Yet.
Mm. I think you're right. And I didn't really see that. I thought because my whole universe just kind of revolved around sobriety once I got sober in 2016, it was just like all my friends became sober, all my content became sober. All the events I went to were catering to sober individuals. So there was lots of choice and lots of options. I don't think I realized how absolutely unique that is and how different and niche that this market truly is until like I started actually working at this podcast studio and they have like beer o'clock at 4 on Thursdays and like, a whole bunch of breweries own this space. And so nobody here is thinking like that, right? There's actually a few that don't drink in this space here. And it's like the first time in my life where I've kind of gone into spaces and not felt at home and a part of and had that little bit of FOMO and those things that I've had to work through. And now I'm feeling joy about it because I'm like, okay, like this really is something because it can feel like everybody's talking about it. Everybody's doing this. Why am I still trying to like, get the word out? But it's not out. It really isn't. Like there's so much room
Mhm.
and so much space and so much help that is needed. I love how you touched on that a little bit about how everyone's got these stories and this like passion and drive that comes from immense pain that they want to help someone else not have to experience or get through. And there's a lot of obstacles in the way in terms of like, how do I show up online? How do I write my book? How do I, you know, edit it, get it out there, market it? And the fact that you're bringing these people together to get those solutions, those answers, and those connections is just unbelievably amazing. And I'm so grateful for you. Um, I want to really jump into how people can get connected with Amplify and come to this event. It's January 15th. I'm going to be there. And Hooked is coming with me. And I know Tamar as well. All our BC crew and Canada crew are coming.
Mhm.
Yeah, how do you get tickets? How do you get involved? And tell me about the event.
Yeah. So Amplify Sober Voices is our website. And for anybody who is interested in coming, there are still spaces. We would love to have you there. Um, one of the unique things about this is that this is the first year we've done it. And as our first year, we had really researched what it would look like to throw a conference of our own. And I don't know, Brooke, if you know this or other people know this, it's expensive.
Yes.
And it's a huge risk on the part of the organizers because you have to have room blocks and you have to have the food and beverage minimum and all of these different things. And then last year, we were at Podfest Expo. And if you haven't heard of Podfest Expo, it is the world's largest podcasters conference. It's held every year in Orlando, and it's people from literally all walks of life, all different topics. I met people from New Zealand and somebody from Colombia and somebody from the UK. And the diversity of topics in the podcast world is so cool. And a couple of years ago, they started having uh, industry specific days run by a separate group. So a group approached them and they wanted to have a Christian day. So they do. Then another group wanted to have like a military day. So they did. There was a dental day. And so that's the one that I went to last year. That's the industry that I move in most of the time. And so when Laura and I were there, we were like, this would be an awesome place to have our own conference. And so it's a day within Podfest, just ticketed by us. If you want to come just for our day, totally fine. But your ticket is includes access to the whole rest of Podfest, and that runs from Thursday through Sunday. So it's a twofer, basically.
Mm.
If you have any interest, not only in being a podcaster, about being a good podcast guest, and just all the things that are happening out in that space. And it's what's really cool about Podfest is it's a whole bunch of people who love to talk and meet people.
Yes.
So instantly you walk into a room and people sit down next to you and you're best friends. And then you go to the next room and you sit down and then you're best friends with them. So you just meet tons of people. It's really, really cool. Um, our day in particular, the format is that we have three speakers on each of those four topics I mentioned earlier. And the speakers are only going to do a 10-minute TED Talk with really the best of what they've learned.
Mm.
And in theory, Brooke, I mean, you could have been on the stage, right? Anybody there could have been on the stage because all of us coming are thought leaders or all are leaders in our space. I don't think anybody who isn't currently doing one of these things already.
Mhm.
We just pick people who've been doing it for much longer than everybody else. So, for instance, with the podcast group, we have Shane Raymer, from That Sober Guy. We have Andy Ramage, who's from England and is amazing. And then Tamar as a podcast coach.
Mhm.
So, and podcaster. So all of them have a unique thing that they're going to share. Following their three talks, we're going to have a very intentional masterminding session at the tables or in different groups because that's where the magic happens.
Mhm.
It's like these three talks have just spurred ideas, and now like we can meet each other and say, oh, well, what are you doing like this? And do you have any other things that you do? And oh my gosh, I'd love to have you on my podcast. And then the next group comes up and they'll be talking about writing. And so we have three amazing speakers talking about writing, another intentional mastermind. Now it's brainstorming around that, making the connections around that, learning tips and tricks. Oh, you have somebody who's helped you publish before? Can I have their information? And so that's the format of the whole day, is just to really lean into each other.
Mm.
Bring those hallway conversations into the room and share and grow and learn the excitement in my body over this is just undescribable because it's of us, for us, by us.
Mm. That is so unique and amazing because I know I've gone to so many of these conferences where it's all about the speaker, it's all about the message they can give. You got your notebook out and then it's over and it's like, okay, well, I've got all this knowledge, from this one person, but to have those 10-minute like really concentrated talks that are just all about value and then being able to discuss and bring that into community and into group, like that is so cool. I cannot wait. It sounds like
Oh,
just a
good.
ton of value.
Well, and one of the things I tell people all the time is that, yes, this is the first of, but you don't want to have FOMO.
Mm,
Like you want to be in the room. Um, there was a group that I went to that was another speaker development group. A woman started up at a brand new conference, and the first time I went, there was only 35 people there.
yeah.
The content was so good that all of us were like, dang, everybody should have been here.
Mm-hmm.
And the next year, there was over 100. And the content was so good. And everybody was like, dang, I should have been there. And so the question is, do you want to be one of those early people where the content is so good and you don't have to say, dang, you can be the one saying, this was amazing, right? And that's what we're really hoping that this is that you just make a decision, get a ticket, and just come.
You always want to be in that founding members sort of thing with these kind of communities as well, because the first ones are usually a little bit more intimate and you can really sink your teeth into those connections. They get overwhelming quite quickly, what I've found with conferences I've attended.
Mm-hmm.
So getting to this one, I think would be amazing. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait to be there. And I actually do love the idea of having it within Podfest as well. Like that's so incredible. There's so much value here. So they can go to Amplify Sober Voices to get a ticket. You also have sponsorship available as well. We've talked about that. Do you want to touch on that briefly and then just share your contact information and how people can get in touch with you on Instagram and your podcast?
Yeah, yeah. So we do have slots for sponsors. We have a really exciting sponsorship put together. We have partnered together with the people at Zero Proof Experiences who run Sober in the City, and also Peggy with the Site of Alcohol. And we put together a package deal where people can sponsor with us and not only get attendance to our conference to exhibit, not only get attendance at their conference to get exhibit, but also a year-round set of marketing that will go to email newsletters, that will go to social media from both of our organizations. And if anybody's interested in that, email us at info@soberliferocks.com because we can send you immediately a pitch deck. We can get on a call with you. We can talk about it. But I would say too, Brooke, if sponsorship is not something you're ready for, but you do run a business either in the sober space or ancillary, just come.
Mm.
Just come, check it out, see what it's all about, and then maybe next year is the year for you. Because either way, you just want to be in the room.
100%. And I do want to push your sponsorship package for a second because we did sit down and talk about it, and it is incredible. It's an amazing value. And also, I love how it's not like a booth that you're standing behind where you're disconnected from the community. Like you're still a part of, you don't have to stand at a table all day and miss the conversation. Like you're really immersed in part of it still, and you don't have to drag a whole bunch of your props from home to
Yeah,
Orlando.
and which
So
you certainly can. I mean, we'll
yeah,
have tables for our sponsors, but if you can tell, Laura and I have both been to hundreds,
yeah.
probably thousands of conferences between the two of us. And there's nothing worse than the sponsor having to stand at a table in the back. And after the session's over, everybody sort of averts their eyes as they're headed for the bathrooms
Yes.
because they don't want to engage in the conversation. And we're just not doing that. Like there will be
Mm,
tables, people can talk to them at the breaks, but during the sessions, during the masterminding discussions, all of our sponsors will be at the tables with everybody, being part of, collaborating, getting to know, networking, all the things.
mhm. Incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on, Margy. I've absolutely loved this chat. I relate to so much of just even a little bit of story. I want to hear more. I want to dive in more. So we'll have to have you back after Amplify and talk about the success of this event and what we want to see coming forward in the future.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me on and for all of the people who are listening, whether you come or not. I just want you to feel like you're heard, you're seen, and you're appreciated.